If you've been following my lawsuit, I know people have been following in the background. There was a hiccup with my lawsuit, which was really fucking fun to deal with, in that I was served right before Christmas. Actually, I was served right before my birthday, and I have a birthday. My daughter has a birthday. We have Christmas, and we do Christmas like 4 times because we got 2 different families, all this shit that we do. Anyway, long story short, prior to my time to respond, I had requested of Monty's lawyer an extension till January 31st to file my response and to file any motions. He just decided not to respond to me. And instead, what they did was they moved for a default judgment. Now, for some reason, everybody thought that that would go through and that I would lose the lawsuit or whatever. But I had filed a motion for an extension of time from the court since his lawyer was being a dick, frankly, and just not returning any communications. He even acknowledged that I had sent the communications, that he knew about them, and that he just refused to return them. The court today granted my motion for an extension, so the filings will be coming by January 31st, responding to that lawsuit. I don't know why. They want to play petty, stupid games rather than act like professionals. But if they want to play petty, stupid games, then this lawsuit is going to be a long and drawn out piece of shit process. And when lawyers do that, it's really fucking gay. And maybe that's what they're going to do, or maybe they'll ship up. My theory, I think Monty doesn't have the money to do a lawsuit, and his lawyers know he doesn't have the money to do a full lawsuit, and they hoped they could get out of this thing on a default, but you can't. You're not going to get out on a default, especially not one where you admit that over the Christmas holiday, you decided to just not fucking answer reasonable requests for an extension. It's not like I asked for 6 months or something crazy. A 30-day extension on these things is very, very normal. So I think they were hoping to get out of this thing and not have to try and bill Monty for it, because I don't know where Monty thinks he's going to get the money to pay these people. And if they took it on a contingency, they're even dumber than I've ever thought. And to be fair, I never thought these guys were dumb. I've talked to these lawyers. I've had very cordial relationships with them. I've had very good conversations with them. They've always been nice and professional. And to see them act like this was a genuine surprise, honestly. But that's in the past now. My motion for extension has been granted, and my response or my answer and any motions that we decide to file will be filed prior to the new deadline. So for everybody who is banking on that default going through, I mean, extensions are granted by court all the time. It's really not that big of a deal. Requesting them isn't a big deal. It's only stupid when someone makes it stupid. Oh, and to Montagraph, who I know is watching this, you have a frivolous case. You always had a frivolous case, and you better fucking hope the court doesn't find it frivolous, buddy. But you know none of the statements I said are defamatory in any way. You know you're doing this purely for your own purposes that have nothing to do with a legitimate lawsuit. And you know you're a giant piece of shit. And I know you're watching. I know you're going to report that to your attorneys. Oh, and also your little gay stalker that you keep sending after me and people I know. Will you tell him to fist himself, please? We just go ahead and do that. Your little Minnesota lapdog, the guy who likes to cum guzzle you or whatever. Will you just tell him to fist himself and to fuck off? And if he keeps trying to bother me, I will file a restraining order, and I'll get one since he's a convicted stalker and I have every reason to believe he's a dangerous retard. Okay, can you do that? And can you take your cock out of his mouth for 10 seconds? Can you do that too? God, you and your pathetic little posse can just eat shit for all I care. You fucking loser. Well, there, Rekieta, I'm gonna sue you. I'm gonna sue you and you're gonna pay. Fuck off, loser. Oh, and if either of you two show up on my property, you'll have about 8 seconds to fucking leave, by the way. You won't get much warning. I will treat your presence anywhere near me as a fucking threat. Fuck you. Spectre says, I'll be sure to retain an actual lawyer, unlike someone. What? Okay. I have a lawyer for the issues in court. I didn't have a lawyer for the Minnesota procedure shit that will that I could take care of myself. But the Minnesota procedure shit would have been a waste to hire my First Amendment lawyer to do. Sounds like fucking excuse for your lies, you shaster lawyer. No, it didn't make sense for my lawyer to file anything while there was a potential default. There's always a possibility that the judge was gonna be really annoying and grant the default and make me fight it. That was a possibility, but we didn't have to do that. Thank God. The judge saw that it was a sensible request for an extension. Now, the judge has left the default order open, presumably because it would be efficient if I do not file my answer by the new deadline to just take up the default motion at that point. So I would presume that that's the reason that the default motion is still up because the court has granted the extension. So am I going to share my response? Yeah, once that's out, we'll cover the complaint in full, the response in full. I was waiting to get rid of this. So the main reason I haven't shared anything about the lawsuit yet is because I knew I was past time. That wasn't a mystery to me, wasn't a surprise. The whole deal with the default was simple. Within the timeline, I had made a reasonable request for extension. The law firm who is representing Montagraph, I went into their office. They're 15 minutes from my house on a slow day. It's about 12 minutes at a normal day. I know these guys. I've worked with these guys. Normally, you make a reasonable request for an extension, they're going to grant it. I haven't brought up and talked about the lawsuit because I knew that I was past time, but I also knew that I had this pending request that I made timely to him, and he had just not responded to me. So I'm like, we'll get this thing resolved before I talk about it at all. The long story short is I really wanted to deal with this preliminary issue before we got into the meat of the issues because it could have mooted everything. Finger says it can't have a default if you timely respond. But the thing is, I technically didn't respond in a timely manner. Technically, according to the rule. Now, I did make a reasonable request, which shows that I'm not like dodging or avoiding. So there wasn't a defense given, but it was obvious that I was trying to make a defense. So it's some silly bullshit, but it's all done. It's all done now. I'm not worried about it. I think I'm ordered to pay reasonable costs associated with it, which is going to be like an hour or something. Way cheaper than fighting a default. So, how is Montagraph suing for damages? He's a broke fat fuck. Well, see, that's the thing. He would have to somehow, if he won, even in default, he would have to prove his damages. That's going to be a real tough thing for Montagraph. Now, you can get presumed damages for the elements of a civil case. You can say, oh, he accused me of a crime. Therefore, I get presumed damages for the elements of the case. But for actual damages, he would have to prove out those damages. And since Montagraph probably has never made $50,000 in his entire life, there's no way he could prove that he lost $50,000 due to anything I said. But that's up to him.